Up next, we have a speaker who truly understands the intersection of design and development in a way that enhances the workflow for both the teams. Please join me in welcoming Chaitanya, a staff engineer at Razorpay. At Razorpay, he and his team created Blade, the design system that powers the company's front-end solutions. Today, he's here to share his expertise on the very same design system tooling, improving design and dev experience. For those of you who might be new to the concept, design system is essentially a collection of reusable components and standards that help both designers and developers work more efficiently. I hope you all have razor-sharp focus for the upcoming talk from Razorpay. Please welcome Mr. Chaitanya.
Thank you for all the kind words. I think I'll reduce some of the things that you mentioned again in my talk. I love the razor sharp quote. Can we get the slides up? Yeah. First of all, thank you everyone for showing up here on a Saturday morning. I know it's difficult to come on a Saturday morning. It took me 2 cups of coffee to just come up here. But if in case you yawn during my talk, I'll just blame it on the Friday night you had instead of my talk. In case I yawn, I'll just blame it on not enough coffee. So I'm Chaitanya. I work as a staff engineer at Razorpay. I'll do that. Yeah. Some of you must have heard of Razorpay or must have seen it somewhere when you're making an online payment. You will see Razorpay pop up somewhere. If you go into a store, you might even see Razorpay POS devices where you're paying through your cards. In a nutshell, Razorpay is one-stop money solution for businesses. So if money has to move from one page to another, Razorpay is going to be there and help you do it more efficiently. And at Razorpay, I specifically work with Blade. Blade is Razorpay's cross-platform design system that powers their entire front end. And this was built by the amazing team that I work with. Whatever I'm going to talk about today is the work that this team has put in. It's a cumulative effort of the entire team. If there's going to be one takeaway that I'd want you to have from this talk, is that if you want to build a design system, build a team that is passionate about design systems, that is passionate about pixel perfect user interfaces. So even before we get into the rest of the talk, right, let's do a refresher on what is a design system. Like you heard a little bit earlier, design system is a collection of reusable components governed by clear standards. But what does that really mean? Reusable components can be your UI components, like a button or a text input or a drop-down, or it could be your tokens, like your color tokens or your shadow tokens, even border tokens. And these reusable components are governed by clear standards. These standards could be your guidelines and patterns that together form the design language of your brand. But why did Razorpay even need a design system? So we realized that we have a lot of different products that we offer to our merchants as Razorpay. What we wanted to make sure is that when a merchant is moving from one product to another, the familiarity of the product remains the same. The look and feel remains the same. You establish a trust with your user when you have that consistent brand language. If you've used Google's Gmail and Google's Calendar, when you move from one product to another, you know exactly that you're in Google's umbrella. And that's what we wanted to create with Razorpay, an ecosystem, an umbrella of interfaces that belongs to Razorpay. We also ship products on web as well as mobile. So we wanted to make sure that our design language is consistent not only on web, but also on our mobile platforms, Android and iOS. We also wanted to make sure that we make our developers and designers' life easy. So whenever a designer is doing something fancy on Figma, we had to make sure that it can be exactly replicated on code. So this is the mantra we follow for our design system. What you see in design is what you get in code. We have 6+ business verticals at Razorpay, which is maintained by a huge team. We have 100+ front-end engineers and 80+ designers, and all of them build a lot. They're constantly building. So we had to find a ways to enable them to build better, build faster. So this is where the design system came in. And we went ahead and we built more than 50 components in our design system. And this really boosted our designer and developer productivity and brand consistency. That's it. Thank you for coming to my talk. That's all I had to talk about today. But even after shipping all the 50 components, I'm still employed at Razorpay, still not fired. So what am I doing at Razorpay while working on Blade? I am trying to make sure I have some job security. So you introduce some bugs so that you can get paid to fix them later. That's generally how things are. Don't share this with my manager, please. I just kid, about 90% kid. I'm not really trying for job security. But what we realized is that while building the design system, we built it on two core principles: quality and speed. We want our products to be of extremely high quality and we want to build them really, really fast. So when we built all the components that you could possibly need, 50 plus components, anything that you want to build can be possible with these components. But still, we were not achieving the quality and the speed that we had in mind. There were still some gaps. There was still something missing that was not letting our designers and developers work as efficiently. When we introduced the design system, some people liked it, some people didn't like it, some people hated it. So we had to make sure that we target our audience to the people who disliked it and how can we solve their problems? What are the challenges they are facing to solve? What we realized after building a bunch of components is that you definitely need a system to scale your build. What do I mean by this is that as Razorpay was growing, we needed a system that can help Razorpay grow more efficiently. But when we built the system, we also realized that we needed tooling to scale our system. What that means is that when you have 100 plus engineers and 80 plus designers using the same system, you need to find more efficient ways to help them use those systems. Otherwise, they're not going to like it. You introduce any friction, people are not going to like it. It's almost like saying I bought a treadmill, and because I bought a treadmill, I'm automatically fit. But that is not how it works. I need to find the right shoes to run on the treadmill. I need to maybe have a fitness tracker to run on the treadmill. I need the right kind of motivation to actually get on the treadmill and run. I need to give it enough time for me to get fit. So just buying a treadmill is not going to get you fit. If the treadmill is 1 kilometer away, there's a friction between me going on the treadmill. I'm not going to do that. If it's 10 floors below my building, still a friction, not going to do that. If it's in my hall, right outside my bedroom, there's a higher chance that I will actually use the treadmill. And this is when we realize that tooling will help us solve these problems. So that's what I'm here to talk about today, design system tooling and how we build some tooling at Razorpay to improve our designer and developer experience. So even before we started identifying gaps for other teams, we did a little bit of introspection. No, we didn't go for therapy, but we just looked at all the inconsistencies and all the inefficiencies in how our team, the Blade team, operates. And we first wanted to solve for that. What we realized early on is that we have a lot of design tokens. We have a lot of colors, a lot of borders, a lot of spacing, and all of this is maintained on Figma as a source of truth. And porting this to code requires you to move everything to an object model. And this is just a small snippet of the code, but it will go into thousands of lines because we have light theme, dark theme, and very nested tokens. So we have to make sure that these stay in sync somehow. If I'm making change on Figma, it has to automatically reflect somehow on my code as well. There were too many tokens that were leading to human error. If somebody is manually updating those tokens, adding those tokens, it's going to lead to some human error. So we built a plugin. We call it the token publisher plugin. I hope you all can see this. So if you observe carefully here, this is our Figma file and all of these other tokens that are available from Blade. And here I'm just changing a few tokens from whitish to greenish. And I'm running the token publisher plugin. The moment I run this, it will automatically trigger a GitHub action that will fetch all the tokens and actually raise a PR that has all the token changes that I made on Figma. So anytime a designer makes any change, that's it, automatically is depending on our code. Another thing that we realized while doing the introspection was we were breaking things a lot. We were shipping fast, we were breaking a lot, we were building new components, we are changing it from time to time, and people don't like it. When you break something in production, people are going to fight back. So every new change, every new commit brought in a lot of uncertainty. So we added sanity checks on our pull requests. We wrote a lot of unit tests to make sure that our components behave exactly how we want them to behave. So on every PR, we run all of these tests to make sure that our components are behaving exactly how we want them to behave. We also wrote a bunch of interaction tests. So interaction test essentially spins up a browser in your CI. It'll maybe run down a drop-down. It'll move the mouse to the drop-down. It'll open the drop-down. If the drop-down opens as intended, your interaction test has passed. If it doesn't, something went wrong with your new change. So we have written a lot of interaction tests for a lot of our complex components like drop-down, bottom sheet, tables. We also realize that our end consumers are obsessed with bundle sizes. We want our performance to be top-notch. So even a little bit of KB addition is not going to be well received with our end developers. So what we started doing is for every pull request that anybody raises to the repo, we automatically generate a bundle size diff. This will exactly tell you how much of an impact you're going to have on the bundle size whenever you make any change, whether you're reducing or increasing the bundle size. And this will actually catch unintended changes. So for example, if I raise a PR where I'm adding a library that's 2 MBs, it's going to catch that, and we can do that in the PR review itself and stop this from going into the main branch. What we also realized is that a lot of our developers were constantly asking us to fix bugs, to make new enhancements to our existing components, and we wanted to make sure that when we are fixing a bug for our end developers, it should actually fix their problem, not just the bug. So what we do is on every pull request, on every single commit in that pull request, it automatically generates an installable build. So if you see here, yarn add npm install, we can just share this part with our developers. They can install this specific version of Blade on their product and see if this has fixed their problem. We introspected, we saw the problems that we were having in our workflows. Then we moved on to the product teams and tried to understand what are the challenges they are facing, what is stopping them from using our system as we intended to use it. So one of the surprising feedback that we got was that the token syntax on Figma looks something like this. So this is the color token, surface slash text slash primary slash normal. And we were fine with it, this looks okay. But the challenge was that on code, this corresponds to surface.text.primary.normal because it's an object. And our developers did not like it. They didn't want to replace the slashes with dots because that impact their efficiency. And developers are inherently trying to optimize their workflows. So what we had to do is match these tokens to those tokens. So naturally, we built another plugin. We call this the token syntax plugin. So if you see the token syntax here, you can see the code syntax here, it's completely empty. And you have to go into individual tokens to see this. We are just running the token dev syntax plugin. And now if I go back into any of the tokens, you can see here there is a code syntax, surface.background.gray. What that means is, this is how a developer's workflow will look like now. This is an amount component on the left, and this is the Figma screen. The developer is trying to understand what color this amount component is using. Surface.text.gray.normal. This used to be surface/text/gray/normal, but now it's just dots. What this means is, automatically copy to clipboard, paste it in code. That's it. You don't have to think about what color to use or if you need to match the token with a separate token on the code base. This is an interesting one. So if you recall, I was talking about how this is the mantra we follow. What you see in design is what you get in code. And we were almost there. I wouldn't say this always happens. There are a lot of gaps, especially when we started doing this, there were a lot of gaps. And what we were able to do was control this on the developer end. So if you have a batch component, it will have a very limited set of colors that it can choose it from. And it's very easy to control from the dev end because there is no CSS prop exposed, there's no style prop exposed. There's no way for a developer to override this. which means we have complete control on what colors are going into the batch. But if you're a designer, you can do this dreaded button called detach syntax, detach instance. What this does is, this component still looks like a component from our design system, but it's no more a design system component. What it will allow the designers to do now is detach the colors as well and change it to whatever they want. And now this becomes a problem because our developers cannot reproduce this on code because the batch essentially on code is restricted to a certain number of components. And this started happening very, very frequently. Our designers would just come and tell us, hey, it's okay, it's just a color change. How does it matter? Just change it to the color I want. The next day they're like, hey, it's okay, it's just a border change. How does it matter? Just 4 pixel, 0 pixel is fine. Then it's just a shadow change. I want it to look cool. Then it's just a font change. This font reflects my use case a lot more than the font that you have given me. And towards the end, you start asking yourself, is this even a brand anymore? We started from this and we ended here. A, the designer has completely gone against the Razorpay brand. B, the developer can't do this on code, which means this is going to lead to a lot of dev and design friction. You've broken quality, you're no more aligned to the brand, and now developers and designers can't get along. So the gap we identified was that detaching component instances was leading to a lot of dev and design friction. So we built a plugin. We call this the Blade Coverage plugin. So this is entirely on Figma. If you see, this is a Figma design of Razorpay's dashboard. I'm selecting the entire frame and running the Blade Coverage plugin. So like you can see here, this is now showing me the blade coverage is good, it's 94%, and there are only 2 components in the entire screen that are used without blade. And if you look closely, it doesn't just give you this card, but it also highlights in red which are the components that are not from blade. So you can easily tell your designer, hey, you need to change this because I can't do this in dev. And this we established as a process for our dev design handoff. If a design is coming to a developer without a batch, developers are not going to accept it. And if it's coming with a batch, we know exactly how to replicate this on the code as well. So, people have started using the coverage plugin really well. They have 90 plus coverage percentage, in some cases 100% coverage. But writing that UI can be repetitive. I've used the word repetitive because I didn't want to call my job boring. But it can be repetitive, it can be exhausting. So we wanted to find a way on how can we make this easier for our developers. So we built a plugin. We call this the Razor Sharp plugin. This is the same design that you saw earlier. I'm in dev mode. I'm selecting this portion of the code which I want to replicate, of the design which I want to replicate on code. I'm going to the plugin section and running Razor Sharp. And if you see here on the right side, there is an import statement that tells you exactly which components you need to import from Blade. And there is a piece of code as well that tells you how you need to code this. So what we'll do is we'll copy these imports, we'll copy this entire code and paste it in our code editor. And that's it. That's all it took to generate the entire UI. So we saw there was a way for designers to calculate the coverage that their designs have for Blade. We saw how developers can easily replicate that on code as well by just copy pasting the code. But even after I've copy pasted the code, even though I know my design has 90 plus coverage, how do I ensure my actual code, what I'm writing in my local host, has a good coverage as well? Yeah, you're right. We built a plugin. So technically, it's not a plugin; it's a Chrome extension. that you can install. And if you see, this is the same design, but actually coded, and there's a local host over there. So this is on our local host. And now all I have to do is run this coverage extension, and it can also highlight the non-data items. So now I know exactly the code I've developed, how much blade coverage percentage it has, and it will exactly highlight which portion of my code is not from blade. So designers can't get away with it, developers can't get away with it. The next thing that we kept thinking about is impact. We built so many things, we built plugins, we built so many components, we're making our developers and designers' lives easier. But our leadership keeps asking us about impact. What are you doing with all of this? How do I know if the design system team is actually progressing in the right direction? How do I know that I still need to invest in the design system? So the gap was that there was not a lot of visibility in the impact that the design system was creating. So what we did is we did a static code analysis for our blade usage. So what this actually does is there is an analysis script which runs in a GitHub action every week. This script will go across every single front-end repos at Razorpay and try to understand how many components are used from the design system, and not just that, not just the component usage, but also on a single component which props everybody is using. So we know there's a 200 people are using the button component, out of which 150 is the variant of primary and 50 is the variant of secondary. So we know exactly how our users are using what we are building. And we send this back to our analytics service. So we can draw some insights into how our users are using our design system, what they're using, what they're not using, what's helpful, what's not helpful. But we were still not satisfied with this because this was still static code analysis. We can go to our repos and understand inputs, but what happens there is if I make an abstraction on a button, I make one abstraction, but I use that in 100 places. Does that mean button is only used once? No, it is used in a lot of places. Then we wanted to understand the real user blade coverage, because this is what will actually give us insight into what blade coverage is in production for our users. So we already knew how to calculate on a page what the coverage is because of the Figma plugin and our Chrome coverage extension. So what we started doing is on every page load, I don't know if you can see this is a page load icon, on every page load of any Razor-based product, we run a coverage analysis script. And this is for our real user. If you log in as a merchant on Razorpay and the page loads, this script will load as well. It will go through all the nodes in the DOM, understand which is coming from Blade, which is not coming from Blade, establish a coverage percentage, send it back to our analytics service. What this helped us in doing is actually derive meaningful insights on how Blade is being used in production. So we know how much coverage every single page has of Razorpay when it comes to Blade. And this will actually help us tell our leadership that this is the direction we are heading towards. If you see a trend line, it's always going up. If it goes down, we're doing something wrong. And this will also help us push individual teams of individual pages to actually make changes and improve their Blade coverage. And just like any other tech talk, it won't really be a tech talk if I don't talk about AI. This is artificial intelligence, by the way, not Apple intelligence. So I'm just getting that lawsuit out of the way. So we started thinking about how we can leverage AI to boost our efficiency, to solve some of our challenges. And we spent the last few months just brainstorming on how AI can actually add value to our systems. So one of the first gaps that we realized is that we built a design system. It has a lot of good components that people can use, but we built a design system far too late. Razorpay as a company was existing for a long time. They already have a lot of products and a lot of pages that are already built with legacy UI. And it's so old that nobody wants to touch it anymore. Nobody wants to go there and redesign it or recreate the UI with a modern look. Nobody has bandwidth, nobody has expertise, nobody wants to take the risk. So how can we solve for this? How can we make sure that our older pages also look like our new design system and we don't end up like Google settings where that is not material UI anymore? So we built an AI-powered code migration. We wanted to make sure that our developers don't have to put in any efforts to migrate old code to use Blade. So we actually trained an AI to understand what Blade is, to understand what our existing components are in our dashboards, and how it can migrate it from the old to the new one. So if you see in this demo, this is Razorpay's payments link page, which is using a very old design system. This has a coverage of 10%, which is extremely low. And changing this would take a lot of efforts, especially the bottom part, which is a table. So what we did is, we created an AI code mod. If you see the imports here, the table is coming from a common table body, which is some really old table that somebody had created. And if you see further down, the structure of this table is a div with a native table element. It has a class name that is giving it some styling. And this is how the file looks like. But when we run the code mod on this file, it translates it automatically to using the Blade components. So this table is now coming from Blade. And if you see the import here, everything is automatically imported from Blade. So our developers essentially had to put in no efforts to migrate an older page to use Blade. And now if I refresh my page and run the Compass plugin again, this is now built with the new Blade interface, and the coverage is now 27%. We went from 10% to 27% within a matter of seconds, without any developer input, just AI doing this for us. And we plan to do this not just for table components, for entire pages going forward, so that developers can spend their time doing meaningful tasks instead of migrating old stuff to new stuff. The next thing that we realized is that we are a small team. You saw the size of my team versus the number of engineers that are there in Razorpay. 100 plus engineers, 80 plus designers, and all of us come on the Slack channel on the design system and ask us way too many questions that we spent a lot of time answering, and that was getting very unscalable for us. So what we started doing is we built an AI-powered Blade bot. This is an intro video that we built for our internal developers and designers. So here, Anurag is asking the Blade bot, how can I install Blade and get started? And now it's giving it complete instructions on how Anurag can do this. How to install fonts, how to even wrap with Blade providers, along with some relevant links that will help Anurag get started without needing anybody's help. Now, since Anurag is new to the design system, he's trying to figure out how can he use a tooltip with his badge. There are two separate components. I have to understand how tooltip works and how badge works. But when I ask it to create bot, the bot has given me the entire code on how to use the tooltip with the badge. And not just that, the bot has also given me let's just see this again. So here's the entire code for the tooltip, which has a badge inside it with the right kind of props, an explanation of what the tooltip component is doing, and also some helpful links on how the developer can go to the tooltip documentation and the badge documentation, the exact URL to the badge documentation to read more about it. And we realize that it's not just about how to use our components, because sure, that's adding a lot of value. But what surprised us the most is that when our engineers or designers ask us questions like these, can we add constraints on a checkbox to select only one instead of multiple selection? Now, this looks fine. This is a valid ask. I just want to select one checkbox at a time, which means that if I have 3 options, I have yes, no, maybe. I only want to select one at a time. I don't want to select 2 at a time. So how can we do it on a checkbox? You can. Maybe checkbox can be a control checkbox where you have a prop that is enabled or is not enabled, and you can toggle that between different checkboxes. And that's what we thought the Blade bot is going to say. Hey, you can use it as a control component and decide how you want to trigger the checkboxes when. But the bot went one step further and actually spoke about how checkboxes are inherently designed for multiple selections. If you want to allow only a single selection, you should use a radio group, not a checkbox. And it also gave it an exact example of how to use the radio group. And in a lot of cases, what we also realized is we didn't want our brain bot to be over smart. We didn't want them to answer questions that don't have answers to. For example, in this case, the requirement was to have buttons, indicator buttons on top of the carousel image, as well as the next and previous buttons on the carousel image. Now, the problem is that we built the carousel inherently in a way that the indicator is below the image and the buttons are besides the image. And there was no way for our designers or developers to achieve this. This is a valid ask. This is what we should improve on. So the PlayerBot didn't go ahead and say, hey, you know what, you can find a way to do this. PlayerBot actually accepted the fact that this is not something that we support today. For your use case, I recommend you to follow a deviation guideline to propose this feature. So deviation guideline is something that we follow internally to make sure that if you have a new ask, new request, you can raise it to the design system team and we can accommodate it. It also told the engineer who was asking the question that if this is a necessary feature, please raise a Jira ticket and the team will look into it. So we are hoping we evolve on AI going further. We have a bunch of ideas that we want to implement in terms of AI, and hopefully you'll see a lot more coming in from Razorpay and Blade. Blade is completely open sourced. The code is open sourced. The Figma files are open sourced. You can go in, use it, tweak it, build your own experiences with it, learn from it, whatever you want, contribute to it. Please fix our bugs. We'll be more than happy. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Nick, for this opportunity. And we can find you on the next conference.
Thank you so much, Chaitanya, for that incredibly insightful talk. It is clear that design system tooling is not just about improving the aesthetic, but also about maintaining consistency. And it's also a powerful way to enhance collaboration between design and development teams. Now it is time for question and answers. So please tell me.
So thanks for giving this. So I had one question from you. During your whole talk, what is the role of test engineering in the whole stack? What you like how the test engineering helps in scaling this, right from the functional security, performance testing, automation, how things are built up there.
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. I think some things we've done for tests is we've written a lot of unit tests and interaction tests that help us make sure that whatever changes we are making are not breaking anything that already exists in production. So that's where test engineering helped us. We've written a lot of tests to make sure that we don't introduce something that is going to break something else. But I understand that is not enough. Another thing that I didn't cover in this talk is we also do visual diff checks. So any new PR that is released, we try to understand what did these components look like before and what do they look like now. If there is even a pixel of difference, the diff check will actually catch it and we'll know it right on the PR. But even when we do all of this on the design system, on the product end, we still need thorough testing. So for example, when I was talking about migrating over older pages to the new system, that comes with two costs, right? One is a developer cost, where a developer has to put in their efforts to make sure that they migrate everything. We try to solve for that cost by building an AI tool, and that reduced our developer cost immensely. But what we still need to do is we still need a QA engineering team to make sure that whatever changes we are building, whatever changes we are making with the migration, before it goes to production, it gets thoroughly tested. So that I think would be an entirely different talk. We do a lot of testing. We have a lot of end-to-end test cases for all of our products in place that run in an automated fashion. And we also have QA engineers who also do double sanity check once the end-to-end tests have passed for critical routes like our checkout experience or our merchant dashboard experience. So test engineering does seep in on both design and product for us.
So do you see the value from the test engineering team in the entire process as well as it's kind of so what do you think? It's a manual intervention or the automation testing is more necessary?
I am always in favor of automation, so I would be biased here. I prefer automating things so that the QA team that we have can focus on critical parts and not focus on non-critical parts. So whatever is non-critical, whatever can, even if it breaks, it's not going to break. It's not going to impact our revenue. If it doesn't impact our revenue, maybe we don't need a manual QA there. If it impacts our revenue, we need a manual QA there to make sure it's not breaking. So we do have manual QAs in place who use things like browser stack to run different test cases. So we've also evolved our QA engineering team to not just do manual checks, but also write end-to-end tests. So we have this philosophy where developers need to own their tests. So developer has to write end-to-end tests as well as unit tests, but only for the P0 flows, only for the critical flows. If other flows are there which a developer has not written tests for, the QA team can come in and do it for us.
Okay. So, do you think automation will replace the manual testers? Like, see, there is a lot of old talks going on around it. Okay. So, automation is something which I believe from my side, it's like it's just a check. Okay. Once there is a manual intervention, there is a deep thinking into that, context-driven testing. Everything has to be done. So it's like. I do believe this, like manual testers cannot be replaced.
Right.
Definitely, they have to upskill to automation testers.
That's absolutely correct. I wake up every day thinking, will AI take my job? But I have to evolve myself in a way that I can work well with AI. I think automation testers have to do the same. In fact, they are already doing the same. I see a lot of very skilled automation engineers who are bringing in amazing solutions even within my org. We have staff engineers who are SDET, who are test engineers on a staff level, who are bringing in amazing solutions for our testing problems. So manual QA is not going anywhere. It will just be enhanced with automation and AI.
I think it's just a fancy word automation, but definitely a human intervention will be required to test any of the application, whether it's AI or AI coming into picture.
Yeah, absolutely.